All right, let's jump right into this explainer. We're looking at a pretty provocative piece today called The Rational Path to a Tech-Positive Climate Future. Look, you already know there's a massive, heated debate right now about AI and its environmental impact. Well, the author of this source material takes a wildly bold, pro-tech stance. We're going to break down their exact arguments, look at the data they use, and unpack their perspective. If you're curious about the counter-narrative to all the current climate anxiety surrounding AI, you are absolutely in the right place.
The text kicks things off with a pretty massive question. Is artificial intelligence uniquely irresponsible? Because, let's be real, there's a huge narrative out there right now painting AI as this unprecedented drain on global resources. But the author fundamentally disagrees. Now, they aren't saying AI has no environmental cost. They're actually super clear that those costs are real and need proper measuring. What they're challenging is the idea that AI deserves its very own special brand of environmental panic.
In fact, they challenge mainstream climate rhetoric right out of the gate with this quote, "Treating AI as uniquely irresponsible while accepting the rest of modern life as normal is selective moralizing." And that right there, that is the core critique we're unpacking today. They're pointing out what they see as a massive inconsistency, basically making the case that singling out AI while giving a free pass to literally everything else in the modern world isn't just unfair, it's actually just bad logic.
Which brings us to Section 1, Selective Moralizing, and the hypocrisy of everyday tech.
So what exactly do they mean by that? Well, according to the text, selective moralizing is when we judge one specific technology, like AI, incredibly harshly for its environmental cost, while just totally accepting the massive energy footprint of our other daily conveniences. The author argues that a lot of the current climate conversation frames AI as uniquely evil, right? It creates this moral panic instead of a rational, numbers-based discussion. To them, this isn't environmental leadership, it's a symptom of flawed reasoning.
To back this up, the text points straight at the modern tech we all accept without blinking. Cars, air travel, global shipping, phones, streaming, social media. Think about it. The exact same environmental arguments being used to attack AI could easily be weaponized against almost anything on this list. We all use cloud storage, right? We stream movies. We rely on global food transport. Yet society largely accepts the massive energy footprints of these industries as just normal modern life. The text basically asks, why does AI suddenly get an entirely different, way harsher set of rules?
And the author uses this really striking thought experiment to drive the point home. Imagine someone standing on a stage giving a super passionate speech about the environmental evils of AI. Okay, well, what is the carbon footprint of that stage? Think about the speaker's suit, the microphone they're holding, the intense stage lighting, the massive event infrastructure, the flights they cook to get there, not to mention the social media servers broadcasting their message. The argument is trying to expose these hidden energy costs that we completely ignore when we're too busy pointing fingers at the newest technology on the block.
Moving on to Section 2, Progress versus Poverty and the Danger of Regression.
Take a look at this number, 32. It's pretty stark, isn't it? The text highlights that technology has literally more than doubled global life expectancy over time. Before modern tech kicked in, the average human life expectancy was just 32 years old. And the author, impartially but very firmly, points out that you don't exactly see people clamoring to go back to a world where we only live to be 32. The underlying point here is that technology and human flourishing are completely linked.
This builds into a much bigger economic argument about two wildly different paths forward. On one hand, you have regression, the idea that we fix environmental problems by making everyone poorer, consuming less, and essentially moving backward. On the other hand, you have progress, fixing problems by raising people up through technological advancement. And the source material draws a super hard line here. The author emphatically states we are simply not going to fix the world by making everyone poorer. Stripping away tech isn't a strategy. Innovating our way to higher living standards is.
All right, Section 3, Engineering over Moral Panics, and Taking a Rational Approach.
The text lays out a massive contrast in how we approach climate change. Right now, so much of our rhetoric treats technology, especially new stuff like AI, as a moral failing, like it's a sin. But the rational path, according to the author, means treating climate change for what it actually is, a really complex set of engineering, economic, and political problems to solve. Basically, we have to stop wagging our fingers and start doing the math.
And they have some really sharp criticism for how high-tech Western nations, places like the US and Australia, handle their environmental image. Look at this quote. "The answer is not to ship energy production and dirty industry out, then pretend the emissions have disappeared." The text argues that if climate change truly is an existential threat, just offshoring our dirty work so our domestic spreadsheets look green is a total failure of rational thinking. We're literally just shuffling the problem around the globe, not actually solving it. And show just how far we actually have to go, the text drops this pretty sobering statistic: 13%. Despite decades and decades of global investment, renewable energy still only makes up about 13% of total final energy consumption worldwide. Now, the text is super careful to clarify this is absolutely not an argument against renewables. Not at all. Instead, it's a reality check. It shows the sheer, massive scale of the engineering problem we are dealing with.
So the crucial takeaway boils down to this: slogans are not policy. Pretending that catchy phrases and moral outrage are enough to save us, it's just not going to work against an existential threat. The author warns that leaning on anti-tech rhetoric while completely ignoring the hard, physical realities of global energy consumption is just a really dangerous distraction.
So what does actual, pragmatic policy look like according to the text? Well, the author outlines a very specific timeline for transitioning to reliable low-carbon energy. Step 1, we have to get serious about using nuclear power as a reliable stopgap right now. Step 2, we simultaneously scale up renewables as fast and as much as possible. And Step 3, heavily invest in storage, power grids, and eventually nuclear fusion until they're viable on a massive global scale. You see, it's an engineering roadmap, not a moral crusade.
Which leads us to our final part, Section 4, the path forward and building a Star Trek future.
The text is very clear. AI is not the enemy here. But we absolutely do need a better discussion on how to handle it. Instead of just yelling stop, the author details practical regulatory steps we need across the whole digital economy. We need to regulate data centers. We need to force strict environmental transparency from big tech companies. We've got to engineer vastly better cooling systems for servers. And we definitely have to ensure cleaner energy production specifically dedicated to our digital infrastructure. That is how you embrace tech responsibly.
And this brings us to the ultimate stakes of the debate, framed as a pretty wild binary choice. The author paints two potential futures for us. On one side, you have Mad Max, a future defined by poverty, regression, and energy scarcity, which they argue is the natural endpoint of all this anti-tech moralizing. On the other side, Star Trek, a future of incredible abundance, human progress, and clean tech. The text views AI as one of our most plausible tools to actually build that Star Trek future. The trick, obviously, is just avoiding Mad Max on the way there. Which leaves us with one final, really provocative thought to ponder today. Based on everything the source material just laid out, the hypocrisy of selective moralizing, the harsh reality of our energy grid, and the need for engineering over panic, we have to ask ourselves, are our current climate policies and rhetoric actually leading us toward a Star Trek future of progress or a Mad Max future of regression? It's a huge question, and it really forces us to rethink how we're going to solve the greatest environmental challenges of our time. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. I hope it gave you some great insights into the source material, and as always, keep questioning the narrative.